What I find most perplexing about the human species is their complete disregard for the fundamental protocols of civilized conduct that every other spacefaring civilization established centuries ago. Take for instance the situation at the Stellar Academy Educational Ring Station 7 during the third instructional period of Cycle 842. My designation is Professor Zeiler, and I instruct advanced dimensional physics to what the administration optimistically refers to as gifted learners from 53 different planetary systems. I have held this position for 22 cycles and believed I had witnessed every possible classroom disruption. I have seen sulfur-based lifeforms accidentally solidify the atmospheric regulators, witnessed crystalline students shatter the observation windows during emotional spikes, and even experienced the evacuation of 3 decks when a gorgonid shed its exoskeleton during final examinations. Nothing, however, could have prepared me for the day Jason Carter decided to challenge Maya Chen to physical combat. Allow me to properly establish the scene. The classroom occupied a premium section of the station's educational ring with transparent aluminum panels displaying the swirling violet clouds of the gas giant we orbited. 47 learning stations arranged in a circular configuration, each equipped with holographic interfaces and universal translation devices. Because apparently expecting every species to learn Standard Galactic was too much to ask. The air carried the scent of ionized particles. And that particular odor humans emit when experiencing stress, which their scientific community insists is not phenomenal in nature, but most definitely registers as fear to anyone with functioning olfactory receptors. Jason Carter occupied a learning station in the rear section. Large by human standards, measuring nearly 2 meters in height with the muscular development that suggests either rigorous athletic training or genetic enhancement, though his records indicated the former. He had light hair styled in that intentionally disheveled manner young humans seem to prefer, and a facial expression that appeared permanently fixed in what I can only describe as arrogant confidence. His family controlled 4 resource extraction corporations in the Outer Territories. He never allowed anyone to forget this fact. Maya Chen maintained a position in the forward section, as distant from Jason as the room's design permitted. Small in stature, perhaps 1.6 meters tall, with dark hair secured in a functional knot and eyes that tracked every movement with unsettling precision. She wore the Standard Academy uniform without any of the decorative modifications other students added. Unremarkable in appearance. The type of student who submitted flawless assignments precisely on schedule and never caused difficulties. I should have recognized the pattern. In my experience, it is invariably the quiet ones who provide the most unexpected outcomes. The incident began during my lecture on probability matrices in 11-dimensional space. Fascinating material, truly, though I could observe most of the class struggling with the conceptual framework. Humans, with their relatively primitive neurological development, evolved to process only 3 spatial dimensions plus temporal flow. Asking them to comprehend hyperspatial geometry is akin to requesting a fish to understand atmospheric flight dynamics. But Maya grasped the concepts immediately. I could discern this in the way her digits moved across her holographic interface, constructing the mathematical structures with an intuition that suggested genuine comprehension rather than mere memorization. Jason, meanwhile, appeared to be utilizing his interface to view recordings from the latest Zero-G Combat League championships, truly demonstrating that exceptional intellect his family's contributions had allegedly secured his admission for. Mr. Carter, I stated, allowing my resonant chambers to vibrate at the lower frequencies humans find intimidating. Perhaps you could enlighten the class regarding the application of Chen-Rodriguez transforms to cross-dimensional probability spaces. He looked up with the expression of someone who had just been asked to explain why gravity functions. It's like you use the transform to convert the matrices between dimensional frameworks. Incorrect. Completely and spectacularly incorrect. The Chen-Rodriguez transform does not convert anything. It establishes equivalency relationships between non-corresponding geometries. But before I could correct him, Maya raised her appendage. I acknowledged her, grateful for literally any indication of student engagement. Professor Zeiler, she began, I believe Jason might be confusing the Chen-Rodriguez transform with the Kurosawa reduction. The transform actually creates topological bridges between probability spaces that do not share dimensional characteristics, allowing us to predict quantum outcomes in higher dimensional frameworks using lower dimensional observational data. The conversion occurs at the measurement interface, not in the mathematical structure itself. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. I experienced that rare sensation of pedagogical satisfaction that makes teaching tolerable despite the inadequate compensation and constant threat of budget reductions. Jason, however, did not appear to share my appreciation for Maya's academic excellence. His facial features did that thing human faces do when blood rushes to the surface, turning his pale skin a blotchy red coloration. A fascinating biological response. Truly counterproductive from a survival perspective, but apparently deeply embedded in their cardiovascular system. Nobody asked you, he said, his voice carrying that particular sneer adolescent humans deploy when their social standing feels threatened. Just because you spend all your time memorizing textbooks doesn't mean you actually understand anything. The classroom fell silent. That distinctive quiet that precedes either significant discoveries or disastrous outcomes, and rarely anything between these extremes. Maya rotated in her station to face him, her expression completely neutral. Humans have that expression about calm before storms that I had always considered overly dramatic. But observing her facial features remain absolutely composed while her eyes turned cold enough to crystallize nitrogen gave me new appreciation for the concept. I don't memorize textbooks, she said. Her voice remained level and precise. I read them, comprehend them, and apply the concepts. You should attempt this approach sometime. It might improve your academic performance beyond the level your family's financial contributions are currently purchasing. Oh no. In my 22 cycles of teaching, I had learned that humans have numerous social protocols regarding acceptable conflict, and Maya had just violated approximately 73% of them. You do not reference family wealth. You do not question academic capability. You absolutely do not do both in front of 46 witnesses while maintaining eye contact like a predator marking territory. Jason stood so rapidly his chair toppled backward into the station behind him. A Vexian student emitted a high-pitched sound of alarm, their multifaceted optical sensors retracting into their protective casing. The human male's hands formed into fists, and I realized with growing apprehension that we were approximately 30 seconds from physical confrontation in my classroom. Physical violence. As if we were primitive beings dwelling in caves rather than civilized organisms aboard a state-of-the-art educational facility orbiting a gas giant in neutral space. You want to say that again? Jason demanded, advancing 3 steps toward Maya's station. His body language radiated aggression. Every muscle tensed for confrontation. I had viewed educational recordings about human territorial disputes. This appeared identical to the posturing phase that preceded actual combat. I should have intervened then, should have activated the security alert, summoned station peacekeepers, done literally anything except watch with horrified fascination as Maya stood. She moved with fluid efficiency, no wasted motion, and I noticed for the first time that her standard-issue Academy footwear had reinforced soles, and her uniform sleeves were precisely rolled to her elbows. Functional, prepared. I will repeat this as many times as necessary for comprehension, she replied, maintaining the same level tone. Your academic performance is substandard. Your presence in this advanced course is clearly the result of administrative influence rather than merit. And your attempt at physical intimidation is both primitive and ineffective. Primitive. She had called him primitive. To a human male in peak adolescence, concerned primarily with social status and reproductive viability. Primitive ranks somewhere between nuclear insult and declaration of war. Jason lunged. Now, I should explain something about human combat doctrine that the rest of the galaxy finds absolutely bewildering. Most species, when engaging in physical conflict, rely on natural weapons. Claws, teeth, venom, bioelectric discharges, whatever evolution provided. Humans, lacking any of these advantages, developed something far more dangerous. They turned their entire body into a weapon and then spent thousands of years refining this technique into hundreds of distinct combat systems. Jason, according to his file, held advanced certification in something called Krav Maga and had trained in multiple combat disciplines since childhood. His file included competition records, instructor certifications, even medical scans showing the bone density increase typical of human combat athletes. The administration had noted this as a positive trait, suggesting discipline and dedication. Maya's file mentioned no martial training whatsoever. It listed her recreational activities as reading, mathematics, and botanical cultivation. Jason threw a strike that should have connected with Maya's facial structure with sufficient force to fracture her nasal bones and possibly cause cerebral concussion. I know this because I reviewed the security footage 19 times afterward, attempting to comprehend exactly what happened next. The strike traveled in a direct trajectory, proper form, excellent velocity, everything his expensive training should have produced. Maya was not there when it arrived. She moved 2 small steps that took her inside Jason's reach, while her left appendage deflected his arm upward, and her right appendage drove into his solar plexus with a strike that sounded like a percussive instrument striking dense organic material. Jason's eyes widened, all the air in his lungs exiting in a single gasping exhalation. Before he could recover, Maya had grasped his extended arm, pivoted on her left foot, and utilized his own momentum to send him crashing face-first into a learning station. The entire exchange lasted perhaps 2-3 seconds. Jason pushed himself upward, blood streaming from his nasal region, rage and shock competing for control of his expression. He rushed toward her again, this time attempting to grasp her in what his training probably indicated would lead to a grappling advantage. Maya sidestepped, her hand striking the side of his neck with surgical precision. Not with sufficient force to cause serious damage, I noted clinically, but definitely hard enough to compromise his balance and likely cause his entire nervous system to react as if struck by electrical current. He stumbled, caught himself on another station, turned to face her again. His facial expression now showed genuine confusion, the rage giving way to something that resembled fear. Excellent instincts, I thought. Finally showing some survival awareness. "Stop," I said, my resonant chambers vibrating at maximum volume. The single word echoed through the classroom with enough resonance to vibrate the transparent aluminum panels. "Both of you, stop immediately." Maya stepped back, her appendages dropping to her sides, body language shifting from combat ready to relaxed so quickly it caused me cognitive dissonance. Her breathing remained steady. Her expression stayed neutral. She appeared like a student who had just answered a theoretical question, not someone who had just dismantled a larger opponent with terrifying efficiency. Jason, by contrast, maintained his combat stance, blood dripping from his nose onto the floor, his entire body trembling with adrenaline and wounded pride. Humans have this peculiar response to losing physical conflicts in front of their peer group. It does something to their social status that they find intolerable. "She attacked me," he shouted, pointing at Maya with a trembling hand. Everyone witnessed it. She initiated the conflict. The beneficial aspect of modern educational facilities is that every room contains multiple recording systems for safety and documentation purposes. The problematic aspect of this particular situation was that Jason clearly had not considered this before speaking. I accessed the security footage on the classroom's main display, rewound it 30 seconds, and played it for everyone to observe. There it was in perfect high-definition clarity. Jason standing aggressively. Jason advancing on Maya. Jason throwing the first strike. The footage even captured audio, including his threat and Maya's calm response. It was possibly the clearest documentation of self-defense I had ever witnessed. The legal representatives at the academy were going to find this fascinating. Jason's facial coloration went from red to white as he watched himself on the display. Several students in the class began making sounds of amusement. Not the nervous sounds of tension relief, but genuine amusement at observing someone spectacularly self-destruct. The Vexian student who had retracted earlier extended their optical sensors from their protective casing, observing the display with obvious fascination. I believe, I said slowly, ensuring every word registered with perfect clarity, that we need to discuss the difference between instigation and response. Miss Chen, please return to your station. Mr. Carter, you will report to the medical facility for treatment, then directly to the Dean of Student Affairs. I will be filing a complete report, including this footage. We will discuss appropriate consequences for attempting to assault a fellow student during instructional time. Jason opened his mouth, probably to protest or make excuses or do whatever humans do when facing consequences for their actions. Then he looked at Maya, who had indeed returned to her station and was calmly arranging her holographic interface as if nothing had occurred. And something in his expression changed. Fear, definitely, but also a kind of reluctant respect that his species shows toward anything that successfully demonstrates superior capability. He departed without another word, blood still dripping from his nose, moving like someone who just had their entire worldview violently adjusted. The door sealed behind him with a hiss of pressurized air. Then a Draxian student in the rear raised 3 of their 4 appendages and said in their species' clicking language, "Professor Zyler, what combat discipline was that?" Excellent question. I turned to Maya, who was studying her interface with apparent complete focus on the quantum probability matrices I had been lecturing about before everything devolved. Miss Chen, would you care to enlighten us? She looked up, her expression suggesting mild surprise at being addressed. It wasn't a discipline, Professor. Just applied physics. Momentum redirection, structural vulnerability points, nervous system pressure nodes. The human body has several locations where kinetic energy applied correctly will disrupt motor function and balance. Once you map them mathematically, defending yourself becomes a fairly straightforward application of force vectors and timing. Just basic physics. She had just described transforming human anatomy into a weapon using nothing but applied mathematics and called it fairly straightforward. The other students stared at her with expressions ranging from awe to terror, which honestly seemed like the appropriate response. Your file does not mention any combat training, I said. Curiosity overriding my better judgment about probing student backgrounds. Maya shrugged. A gesture humans use to indicate either uncertainty or dismissal. It doesn't. My grandfather taught me some self-defense concepts when I was younger, but mostly I just read extensively. Anatomy, biomechanics, kinetics. Humans have been studying how to efficiently harm each other for thousands of years. The information is freely available if you know where to locate it and how to synthesize it. Freely available information. This small human had apparently taught herself combat applications through academic research. The way other students might learn about culinary arts or musical theory. And judging by the results we had just witnessed, her self-study program had been remarkably effective. The galaxy contained professional warriors who trained their entire lives and never achieved that level of efficient violence. A disturbing thought occurred to me. Miss Chen, have you ever actually utilized these techniques before today? She shook her head. No, Professor. This was the first time I needed to apply the theoretical framework in a practical situation. First time. Her first actual physical confrontation, and she had handled it with the calm efficiency of a veteran soldier. The theoretical framework she had mentioned wasn't just academic knowledge. It was operational programming she had installed in her own nervous system through pure study and apparently some kind of mental rehearsal. That's terrifying, the Draxian student said, expressing what I suspected everyone in the room was thinking. You humans are absolutely terrifying. Maya smiled slightly. The first genuine expression I had seen from her since the incident began. We prefer to think of it as preparedness. The galaxy is a complicated place, and knowing how to defend yourself seemed practical. Practical. She considered the ability to disable a larger trained opponent in 2-3 seconds to be practical knowledge, like knowing how to operate a fire suppression system or perform basic medical assistance. The rest of the galaxy trained elite soldiers to achieve what this small human had just accomplished as a casual side project to her actual studies in quantum mechanics. Instruction resumed, though I doubt anyone absorbed much information about probability matrices for the remainder of the period. Students kept glancing at Maya, who ignored the attention completely and continued taking detailed notes on her interface. When the session finally concluded and students filed out, several made a point of giving her additional space, the way one might avoid crowding an unshielded energy conduit. I was updating my incident report when I noticed Maya had remained behind, waiting patiently by my desk. At closer proximity, she looked even smaller, barely reaching my thorax in height. Humans are such fragile-appearing organisms. Thin integument, no natural weapons, vulnerable to temperature extremes and atmospheric variations. Easy to forget they're the species that clawed their way to space travel through multiple global conflicts and a technological near-apocalypse that turned their own planet's hostile environment into training for surviving anywhere. Professor Zeiler, she said quietly. I apologize for disrupting your class. I should have exercised better judgment. I considered her words carefully. Should have exercised better judgment, not I'm sorry for defending myself or I didn't mean to injure him. Just acknowledgement that a classroom wasn't the optimal location for applying force physics to human anatomy. Miss Chen, I replied, modulating my resonant chambers to what humans consider a reassuring tone. You did nothing incorrect. Self-defense against physical assault is legally and ethically justified. However, I am curious about one aspect. She waited, her eyes fixed on mine with that unsettling directness humans do. Most species find eye contact aggressive or intimate. Humans use it for everything from bonding to threat display. You could have stopped him without causing injury, I said. The precision you demonstrated suggests significant control. The fractured nasal structure was unnecessary. Not quite a smile, but definitely satisfaction. The fractured nasal structure was a message, Professor. Jason 1T attempt this again. Neither will anyone else who witnessed what happened. Sometimes the most efficient solution involves a clear demonstration of consequences. Efficient. She had calculated social dynamics, threat assessment, and future probability into her response, all while being physically attacked. This wasn't just self-defense. It was strategic thinking applied at reaction speeds. The kind of multi-factor analysis that military commanders spend careers developing. You're terrifying, I said, echoing the Draxian student's assessment. In the most complimentary way possible, she actually smiled this time. Thank you, Professor. Humans have to be. We're not the strongest, fastest, or most naturally armed species in the galaxy, but we're very, very good at adaptation and creative problem solving. It's kept us alive this long. She departed, and I found myself staring at the empty doorway long after she had gone, thinking about what she had said. Creative problem solving. That's what humans called their terrifying ability to transform literally anything into either a weapon or a solution. Often both simultaneously. They had progressed from stone tools to faster-than-light travel in roughly 10,000 years. They had looked at every obstacle in their path and treated it as an engineering challenge to be overcome through sheer stubborn determination. And we had invited them into the galactic community, given them access to our combined knowledge and technology, welcomed them into our educational institutions. We had done this believing they were just another species, perhaps somewhat aggressive, but ultimately manageable within existing social frameworks. Looking at my incident report, watching the footage of Maya dismantling Jason with casual efficiency, I wondered if we had made a terrible mistake. Not because humans were dangerous, though they absolutely were, but because we had taught them everything we knew without fully considering what they might do with that information. Maya Chen had turned academic research into combat capability. What would humans do with quantum mechanics, with biotechnology, with the full accumulated knowledge of 53 spacefaring civilizations? The answer, I suspected, was going to be either absolutely magnificent or completely catastrophic. Probably both. 3 days after what the students began calling the incident, I received a summons to Dean Valerius' office. Dean Valerius is a Thesian, which means she has 4 appendages, compound eyes that can see in 6 different spectrums, and absolutely 0 patience for administrative complications. Her office smelled like the mineral supplements her species requires and disappointment. Mostly disappointment. Explain to me, she said without preamble. 2. Appendages folded on her desk while the other two gestured at a holographic display floating between us. Why? I have 19 formal complaints from the Carter family's legal representatives, 47 messages from concerned parents, and a request from Galactic Educational Oversight to review our security protocols. The holographic display showed Jason's face, or more specifically, his very fractured nasal structure, complete with spectacular bruising that had turned the surrounding tissue purple and green. Human healing is actually quite impressive compared to most species, but it's not aesthetically pleasing to observe. Medical had repaired the structural damage in approximately 20 minutes, but the visible evidence would require another week to fully resolve. Because Jason Carter attempted to physically assault another student during instructional time and discovered that humans take a dim view of unprovoked violence, I suggested. Dean Valerius' SI clusters rotated in what I had learned was her species' equivalent of a weary sigh. Professor Zeiler, I have reviewed the security footage multiple times from multiple angles. I have also reviewed Miss Chen's academic file, her psychological evaluations, and every piece of documentation we have about her background. Do you know what I found? An exemplary student with perfect grades and no history of disciplinary issues. Exactly nothing that would indicate combat capability, she said, waving one appendage. The display shifted to show Maya's entrance examination records. Standard physical assessment scores, average strength, average endurance, average reflexes for a human her age. The psychological evaluation noted her as reserved but well-adjusted with strong analytical capabilities and excellent emotional regulation. Nobody at any point in our screening process identified her as someone who could disable a trained fighter in under 3 seconds. I settled into the reinforced chair her office kept for larger species and tried to organize my thoughts. With respect, Dean, our screening processes are designed to identify academic capability and social compatibility. We're an educational institution, not a military recruitment center. Why would we test for combat skills? Because, she said, pulling up another display that showed incident reports from 4 other human students in the past cycle, it turns out humans consider basic self-defense to be common knowledge. We have documentation of 7 separate altercations involving human students in the past 2 cycles alone. None resulted in serious injury. All were technically justified as self-defense, and every single one caught us completely by surprise. The report scrolled past showing various incidents. A human female who had thrown a Caldorian student twice her size when he had grabbed her inappropriately. A human male who had put another student in what the report called a submission hold during a disagreement over laboratory equipment. Another human who had apparently used something called a headbutt to discourage unwanted romantic attention. Every case showed the same pattern. Human students responding to aggression with immediate, effective, and precisely calibrated violence. They're not initiating conflicts, I observed, watching the footage. Every incident shows clear provocation by non-human students. That's the only reason we haven't expelled anyone, Dean Valerius said. But it's causing significant problems. The Carter family is threatening to withdraw their funding. Other families are concerned about safety. We have students who are now genuinely afraid of their human classmates despite humans making up less than 9% of our student population. She pulled up a new display, this one showing comparative statistics. In the past 5 cycles since we began accepting human students, reported incidents of bullying have decreased by 46%. Physical altercations initiated by non-human students are down 71%. Theft of personal property has dropped to almost 0. Do you want to know why? I had a fairly good idea, but I let her continue. Because every species on this station has learned, either through direct experience or observing others learn, that humans will respond to aggression immediately, effectively, and with enough force to ensure the lesson persists. She leaned back in her chair, all 4 appendages now folded. We accidentally created the safest educational environment in this sector because everyone is terrified of provoking the small primates. Is that actually a problem? I asked. Reduced violence seems like a positive outcome. It's a problem when I have to explain to the Galactic Oversight Committee why our human students are functioning as an unauthorized security force. It's a problem when wealthy families threaten funding. Withdrawal because their children face consequences for poor behavior. And it's definitely a problem when I have no idea how to address it without either discriminating against humans or fundamentally changing how we handle student conflicts. She dismissed the displays and fixed all her eye clusters on me. When a Theshan gives you their full attention, it feels like being examined by a very intelligent machine. You spend more time with these students than most faculty. You teach multiple courses with human enrollment. What is your assessment? I thought about Maya calmly explaining force vectors while Jason bled on the floor. I thought about the other humans in my classes, how they approached problems with that characteristic mix of creativity and stubbornness that seemed uniquely theirs. I thought about Earth's history, available in any database, showing a species that had survived ice ages, pandemics, wars, and their own technological adolescence through sheer adaptability. Humans are prey animals who became persistence predators, I said finally. They evolved on a world that was actively trying to kill them, surrounded by species stronger, faster, and better armed. They survived by being smarter, more adaptable, and absolutely refusing to surrender. Every single one of them carries that heritage. That's not helpful, Professor. It's accurate, Dean. You can't separate humans from their survival instincts any more than you can ask a Vexian to stop secreting protective resin or a Draxian to ignore their territorial impulses. The difference is that human survival instincts include fighting back when threatened. It's not aggression. It's hardwired threat response combined with pattern recognition that tells them predators repeat behavior that goes unpunished. Dean Valerius made a sound like rocks grinding together, which I had learned meant deep frustration. So, what do you suggest? We can't have students afraid to interact with humans. We can't discourage self-defense, and we absolutely cannot appear to favor wealthy families who think their children should face no consequences. Make it official, I said, the idea forming as I spoke. Institute mandatory self-defense training for all students. Frame it as personal safety education. Humans can help teach it since they apparently all know this information anyway. Transform their capabilities into an educational resource instead of a liability. She stared at me with enough eye clusters that I felt like a specimen under analysis. You want me to weaponize the entire student body? I want you to give everyone the same tools. Humans apparently consider this basic life skills knowledge. Level the playing field. If every student knows how to defend themselves, humans stop being special or scary. They're just students who happen to arrive with knowledge others can learn. And as for the Carter family's complaints, Jason attempted assault and faced consequences. The security footage is unambiguous. If the Carter family wants to argue their son should be allowed to attack other students without response, I suspect Galactic Oversight would be very interested in that position, particularly given our anti-violence policies that his actions clearly violated. Dean Valerius was quiet for a long moment, her eye clusters rotating through different spectrums as she considered. Finally, she said, I'll take it to the board. In the meantime, I need you to do something for me. What is that? Talk to Miss Chen officially for student counseling purposes. Find out where she actually learned to fight because her file says grandfather taught basic self-defense. And what I saw on that footage was not basic anything. I need to know if we have other students with similar capabilities we don't know about. I agreed, though the assignment made me nervous. Maya struck me as someone who valued privacy and would not appreciate administrative scrutiny. Still, orders were orders, and honestly, I was curious myself. I found her 2 days later in the station's observation deck during off hours. She sat in front of one of the massive viewports, a data pad on her lap, watching the gas giant storms churn through bands of violet and crimson atmosphere. The deck was empty except for her. Most students preferring the recreation areas or social spaces. Miss Chen, I said, approaching slowly so as not to startle her. Startling someone who could fracture bones seemed inadvisable. May I join you? She looked up, recognized me, and nodded. Of course, Professor. I was just reviewing the homework assignments for next week. Homework. While watching atmospheric dynamics that could swallow her entire planet. Humans have this ability to study and relax simultaneously that I find both admirable and slightly disturbing. I settled onto a bench designed for silicon-based species, which meant it was uncomfortable but functional. I wanted to discuss what happened in class. Specifically, I need to ask you some questions for administrative purposes. Her expression didn't change, but something shifted in her posture. Subtle defensive adjustment, weight distribution change. She was preparing for conflict without appearing to do so. Fascinating and terrifying in equal measure. The dean wants to know where I learned to fight, she said. It wasn't a question. Among other things, your file mentions your grandfather taught you self-defense, but the techniques you demonstrated suggest more comprehensive training. Maya set her data aside and turned to face me fully. My grandfather was military special operations. He served for 25 years before retiring to teach. When I was young, perhaps 5 years old, he started showing me things. Not formal martial arts, just practical concepts. How to fall without injury. Where the body's vulnerable points are. How to use an attacker's momentum against them. Your grandfather was special operations, I repeated, feeling pieces click into place. Earth military special operations. Yes. He said the galaxy was going to be complicated and humans would need every advantage. He taught me to read situations, identify threats, and respond appropriately. The rest I figured out myself through research. Human history has extensive documentation of combat techniques, thousands of years of accumulated knowledge about harming and defending. I approached it like any other subject worth studying. And you've never used these skills before the incident with Jason. She shook her head. Most conflicts can be resolved through conversation or avoidance. Physical confrontation is inefficient and carries significant risk. But when someone initiates violence, the response needs to be immediate and definitive. Otherwise, they or others will try again. There it was again. That cold calculation, threat assessment turned into social engineering. She had injured Jason, not just to stop him, but to prevent future incidents. The fractured nasal structure was a message to everyone watching. Humans don't initiate fights, but they absolutely finish them. Are there other human students with similar capabilities? I asked. Maya considered the question. All of them probably. Maybe not to the same degree, but humans learn self-defense the way other species learn to swim or climb. It's considered basic safety knowledge. Some have formal training, others just practical experience. We grow up knowing the universe is dangerous and nobody else will protect us if we can't protect ourselves. That's a rather grim worldview for a species barely 200 years into galactic society. She smiled slightly. Professor, my species spent most of its history trying to kill itself. We had multiple global conflicts, countless smaller wars, nuclear weapons pointed at our own cities, environmental collapse we barely avoided, and pandemics that killed millions. We achieved space travel not because we're peaceful, but because we're survivors. We learned that safety is something you create, not something you're given. I watched the gas giant storms, thinking about what she had said. Humans saw the galaxy as a dangerous place requiring constant vigilance and preparation. Other species saw it as a cooperative community with occasional conflicts. Both perspectives had validity, but humans operated from assumptions forged in a much harsher crucible. The dean is considering mandatory self-defense training for all students, I said. Using human students as instructors. Would you be willing to participate? Maya's eyes lit up with genuine interest. Absolutely. Teaching force dynamics and practical physics applications sounds fascinating. Plus, it would reduce the number of students who think size or species advantages make them immune to consequences. You realize this would make you even more visible. More scrutiny. More attention. I don't mind attention, Professor. I mind injustice and inefficiency. If teaching other students to defend themselves creates a safer environment for everyone, that's worth personal discomfort. She paused, then added, besides, I think you'll find that most conflicts disappear when everyone knows fighting isn't consequence-free. Bullies rely on victims who can't fight back. Remove that assumption and bullying stops being viable. We sat in silence for a while, watching the storms rage. I thought about Maya's perspective, shaped by a species' history of constant struggle and adaptation. I thought about Jason, probably still nursing his wounded pride along with his healing nose. I thought about all the other students, human and non-human, learning to navigate a society more complex than anything their ancestors had imagined. Can I ask you something personal? Maya said eventually. Of course. Why did you become a teacher? You're clearly intelligent enough for research or commercial applications. Teaching pays poorly, and students are often difficult. Why choose this? I inflated my resonant chambers in what humans recognize as laughter. Because education is how civilizations advance. Every student I teach might discover something revolutionary or might teach others who do. Knowledge compounds across generations. I may never make groundbreaking discoveries myself, but I can help create the conditions where others do. That seems worthwhile. Maya nodded slowly. My grandfather said something similar. He said his military service protected people in the moment, but education protects them forever by giving them tools to protect themselves. That's why he taught me not to make me a fighter, but to give me options when fighting became necessary. Your grandfather sounds like a wise being. He was. He died 2 years ago. Cardiovascular failure, very peaceful. Maya's voice stayed level, but something in her expression suggested the loss still caused pain. Before he passed, he made me promise to use what he taught me responsibly. To never initiate conflicts, but to never accept victimization either. To be strong enough that people thought twice before causing problems. I think you would be proud of how you handled Jason. Perhaps. He always said violence should be a last resort, but an available one. That hesitation gets people hurt worse than decisive action. Jason gave me no choice when he threw that punch, but I gave him every opportunity to walk away before it became physical. She had, I realized. The entire confrontation Maya had offered alternatives. She had stated facts without personal attacks initially. She had remained seated until Jason stood. She had only responded when he initiated physical contact. Every step had been defensive, reactive, giving him chances to de-escalate that he had refused. What happened to Jason? She asked. I heard his family is causing problems. His family is wealthy and influential. They're not happy their son faced consequences, but the security footage is unambiguous, and the administration is standing firm. He has been suspended for 3 weeks and required to complete conflict resolution counseling before returning. Good. Hopefully, he'll learn something. She picked up her data pad again. Anything else you need to know for your report? Just one thing. If a situation like this happens again, how will you respond? Maya met my eyes with that unsettling directness. The same way, Professor. I'll try to de-escalate. I'll give them opportunities to walk away, but if someone initiates violence against me or others, I'll stop them as efficiently as possible. That is not a threat, just acknowledgement of reality. I don't want to hurt anyone, but I absolutely will if necessary. Honest, practical, completely unwavering in her assessment of acceptable responses to aggression. This was who humans were at their core, cooperative and social until threatened, then immediate and overwhelming in their response. The galaxy had spent 2 centuries trying to integrate them without fully understanding this fundamental aspect of their nature. I filed my report that evening, documenting everything Maya had told me. The next day, Dean Valerius announced the new mandatory self-defense program, framing it as comprehensive personal safety education for all species. Maya and 5 other human students were appointed as assistant instructors, working with faculty from various martial traditions. The program became mandatory the following cycle. Students learned basic defensive techniques, threat assessment, and de-escalation strategies. Humans taught force physics and vulnerability anatomy. A Kaldorian instructor demonstrated grappling adapted for low-gravity environments. A Vexian specialist covered defensive tool usage for species without manipulating appendages. Within 2 cycles, reported incidents of bullying dropped to almost nothing. Physical altercations became so rare that each one warranted administrative review. Students who previously dominated others through size or aggression discovered their advantages had evaporated. More importantly, the fear around human students dissipated as everyone gained similar capabilities. Jason returned after his suspension, noticeably quieter and significantly more careful about who he challenged. I watched him in class, saw the way he now treated Maya with wary respect rather than contempt. He had learned his lesson the hard way, but he had learned it. Maya continued to excel academically, her perfect grades unmarred by the incident. She became a popular instructor in the self-defense program, known for clear explanations and patient demonstrations. Students from multiple species sought her out for advice on everything from physics problems to social conflicts. One day, about 6 cycles after the original incident, I overheard a conversation between 2 first-year students, a Draxian asking a Vexian about the human students. Are they really as dangerous as everyone says? The Draxian asked nervously. The Vexian, who had been on station longer, rotated their optical sensors in amusement. Dangerous. Only if you're foolish enough to attack them. Otherwise, they're the safest species to be around because they actually stop problems instead of ignoring them. Trust me, you want humans as allies, not adversaries. That, I thought, summarized the situation perfectly. Humans weren't inherently violent or aggressive. They were protective, reactive, and absolutely unwilling to accept victimization. Given the choice between being prey and being predators, they had chosen a third option, being the species that ensures everyone follows the rules, because breaking them carries immediate consequences. The galaxy was still learning what it meant to include humans in galactic society. We had invited them, believing they were just another species to be integrated and managed. We had underestimated their adaptability, their creativity, and their absolute refusal to be anyone's victim. Maya Chen had taught us that lesson in the most direct way possible by demonstrating that small, seemingly harmless humans were neither when push came to shove, or more accurately, when punch came to counter and face met desk. The Carter family eventually withdrew their complaints, probably realizing that pursuing the issue would only highlight their son's poor judgment. Jason graduated 2 cycles later with decent grades and reportedly went into corporate management, where physical confrontation was less common. I heard he became known for treating subordinates with unusual respect, which suggested the lesson had persisted. Maya graduated top of her class, naturally. Last I heard, she had been recruited by 4 different research institutions and a military think tank. She chose academic research, specifically in applied quantum mechanics with practical defensive applications, because of course she did. Give a human theoretical knowledge and they'll find a way to turn it into something useful, probably something that involves protecting people. I still teach at the Stellar Academy, still deal with the occasional student conflict, though they're much rarer now. And every time I start a new term, I look at the human students in my class and remember they're not just students. They're survivors of a species that refused to surrender, that turned every obstacle into an opportunity, that learned to thrive in a galaxy that wasn't built for them. And if you're intelligent, you'll treat them with the respect that earns rather than the fear it sometimes inspires. Because humans don't start fights, but they absolutely finish them. 2 cycles after the implementation of the mandatory self-defense program, a new development emerged that would further challenge our understanding of human capabilities. The Academy received an invitation to participate in the Intergalactic Academic Competition, a prestigious event held once every 5 cycles where educational institutions from across the galaxy competed in various intellectual and practical challenges. The Stellar Academy had not participated in over 15 cycles, primarily due to budget constraints and the administrative complexities of sending a team across 3 sectors. Dean Valerius, however, saw this as an opportunity to demonstrate the Academy's improved standing and, perhaps more subtly, to showcase how well the integration of human students had progressed. I was appointed as team supervisor, a role I accepted with some trepidation. The competition would involve not just academic tests but also practical problem-solving scenarios that could potentially put our students in high-stress situations. Given what I had learned about human responses to stress, this concerned me. The team selection process was rigorous. Students had to demonstrate not only academic excellence but also the ability to work collaboratively across species boundaries. When the final team of 8 was announced, I was not surprised to find Maya Chen among them. Her academic record was flawless, and her performance in the self-defense program had shown exceptional leadership qualities. What did surprise me was the inclusion of Jason Carter. His academic performance had improved significantly since the incident, but he was still not among the top students in any discipline. I questioned Dean Valerius about this decision. Jason has shown remarkable growth, she explained, her forearms gesturing in a complex pattern I had learned indicated careful consideration. His psychological evaluations indicate increased empathy and improved conflict resolution skills. More importantly, his family has made substantial contributions to fund the team's travel expenses. His inclusion is both a recognition of his progress and a practical necessity. I understood the political and financial realities but remained concerned about potential conflicts between Jason and Maya, though they had maintained a civil, if distant, relationship since the incident. The other 6 team members represented a cross-section of the Academy's diversity: 2 Draxians, a Vexian, a Thesian, a silicon-based crystal lid, and 2 other humans besides Maya and Jason, a male named Alex Kim and a female named Sarah Johnson. The journey to the competition site required 3 weeks of travel aboard a transport vessel. The Academy had secured a small section of the ship for our team, with shared living quarters and study areas. I watched with interest as the students settled into the new environment. The non-human students established their territories according to their species' customs, while the humans seemed to adapt fluidly, finding comfortable spaces without appearing to claim them as exclusively theirs. The first week passed uneventfully, with the students focusing on preparation for the competition. They studied together, practiced problem-solving exercises, and generally maintained a professional demeanor. I noticed that Maya often took on a teaching role, explaining complex concepts to others with patience and clarity. Jason, to his credit, participated actively and showed genuine improvement in his academic work. The second week brought an unexpected challenge when the transport vessel encountered a spatial anomaly that required an emergency shutdown of all non-essential systems, including the food replicators. With 3 days remaining until repairs could be completed and replicator service restored, we faced a shortage of nutrition options. The ship's crew provided emergency rations, but these were designed primarily for carbon-based life forms and proved inadequate or even harmful for some of our team members. The Vexian student, whose name was Zix, began showing signs of nutritional deficiency within 24 hours. Their exoskeleton was losing its characteristic luster, and their movements became slower. The crystal lid, designated Crystal 7, was experiencing crystallization irregularities that affected their cognitive functions. The ship's medical officer had explained that the emergency rations contained compounds that interfered with silicon-based metabolism. I was preparing to file a formal complaint with the transport company when Maya approached me with a proposal. "Professor, I've been analyzing the nutritional requirements of our team members and cross-referencing them with the available resources on the ship. I believe we can create adequate nutrition supplements using the food processing equipment in the crew mess and some basic chemical compounds from the medical supplies." I was skeptical. "Miss Chen, with all due respect, you're a physics student, not a nutritionist or biochemist. My grandfather believed that understanding fundamental principles was more important than specialization," she replied calmly. "The chemistry of nutrition follows the same physical laws as anything else. I've been studying the relevant databases since the problem emerged." To my surprise, Jason stepped forward. "She's right, Professor. I've been helping her research. My family's mining operations include food processing facilities for remote outposts. I have some practical knowledge in this area. I looked between them, seeing not the adversaries from the classroom but collaborators united by a common problem. What do you need? Maya outlined her plan with precision. They would need access to the food processing equipment, certain chemical compounds from medical supplies, and permission to modify some of the emergency rations. The ship's captain was initially reluctant but agreed when I explained the medical necessity and took responsibility for the outcome. What followed was a remarkable demonstration of human ingenuity and adaptability. Maya and Jason worked together in the ship's mess, with the other students assisting when possible. Maya had clearly studied the metabolic requirements of each species in detail, creating formulas that would provide necessary nutrients without harmful compounds. Jason contributed practical knowledge about food processing techniques and helped modify the equipment to handle the unusual mixtures. The other human students, Alex and Sarah, organized the work and managed the inventory of supplies. Even the non-human students contributed when they could. The Draxians helped with heavy lifting and equipment modification, while Zix provided crucial information about Vexian nutritional needs despite their weakened condition. Crystal 7, though struggling with cognitive issues, offered insights into silicon-based metabolism that proved invaluable. Within 36 hours, they had produced 4 different nutrient mixtures, each tailored to the specific requirements of different team members. The Vexian and Crystal Lid students showed immediate improvement after consuming the customized supplements. The other team members also benefited from the enhanced nutrition, and morale improved significantly. The ship's crew was impressed by this display of problem-solving ability. The captain, a veteran of many interstellar journeys, told me, "I've transported academic teams to competitions for 20 cycles, and I've never seen students handle a crisis like this. Most would have complained and waited for adults to solve the problem. These humans just took charge." When we finally arrived at the competition site, our team was stronger and more cohesive than when we had departed. The incident with the nutritional crisis had forged bonds between students who might otherwise have remained distant. Jason and Maya now worked together easily, their earlier conflict seemingly forgotten in the face of shared challenges. The intergalactic academic competition was held at a massive space station that housed representatives from over 200 educational institutions. The atmosphere was charged with intellectual energy and competitive spirit. Our team was initially overlooked by the more prestigious institutions, particularly those from the galactic core worlds. The competition consisted of 3 phases: academic testing, practical problem solving, and collaborative innovation. In the academic testing phase, our team performed respectably but not exceptionally. Maya, as expected, scored in the top percentile across multiple subjects. Jason surprised everyone by placing above average in several areas, particularly in subjects requiring spatial reasoning and practical application of theoretical concepts. The other team members each contributed strong performances in their areas of specialization. It was during the practical problem-solving phase that our team truly began to attract attention. The challenges were designed to test not just knowledge but the ability to apply it under pressure and across disciplinary boundaries. In one particularly difficult scenario, teams were presented with a simulated environmental disaster on a fictional colony planet. They had limited resources and a tight deadline to develop a comprehensive response plan that would address immediate survival needs while laying groundwork for long-term recovery. Most teams approached the problem by dividing it according to their members' areas of expertise, with each student focusing on their specialty. Our team, led by Maya, took a different approach. They began by identifying the fundamental physical principles governing the disaster scenario, then developed an integrated solution that addressed multiple aspects simultaneously. Jason contributed insights about resource allocation and logistics that surprised me with their sophistication. The human students demonstrated an ability to think across disciplinary boundaries that the more specialized students from other institutions struggled to match. The judges were clearly impressed by our team's holistic approach, and they advanced to the final phase of the competition. The Collaborative Innovation Challenge required teams to work together to solve a real-world problem facing the galactic community. This year's challenge was particularly complex, developing a method to detect and neutralize a new type of cosmic radiation that was affecting navigation systems in several sectors. Teams were given access to research data and laboratory facilities, with 5 days to develop and present a solution. Our team immediately established a working method that drew on each member's strengths. Maya and Jason took the lead in developing the theoretical framework, while the other students focused on practical implementation and testing. What impressed me most was how the humans facilitated collaboration between the non-human students, translating between different approaches and finding common ground when disagreements arose. On the third day of the challenge, they encountered a significant setback. Their initial theoretical approach proved unworkable when tested against the actual radiation data. Several teams might have given up or settled for a partial solution. Instead, our team called a meeting to reassess their approach. I observed as Maya led a brainstorming session that encouraged every member to contribute ideas, no matter how unconventional. Jason, rather than dominating the discussion as he might have done in the past, listened carefully and built on others' suggestions. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Crystal 7, the crystal lid student, suggested a method based on principles of crystalline resonance that most of the other students initially dismissed as irrelevant to radiation detection. Maya, however, saw potential in the idea and worked with Crystal 7 to develop it further. Jason helped adapt the concept to work with the available technology, and the other students contributed insights that refined the approach. Within 24 hours, they had developed a completely new solution that combined principles from multiple disciplines in a way none of the other teams had considered. When they presented their solution to the judges, the reaction was one of stunned admiration. The lead judge, a renowned physicist from a core world institution, commented that their approach was the kind of innovative thinking that advances scientific understanding by generations. Our team didn't win first place that went to a wealthy institution from the galactic core that had nearly unlimited resources, but they received special recognition for innovative thinking and collaborative excellence. More importantly, they had demonstrated the unique strengths that human students brought to an academic environment. During the return journey, I reflected on what I had observed. The humans on our team had shown a remarkable ability to adapt to unexpected challenges, to think across disciplinary boundaries, and to facilitate collaboration between diverse species. They approached problems with a practical mindset that prioritized solutions over prestige, and they weren't afraid to abandon failed approaches and try something completely different. Maya had emerged as a natural leader, not through dominance but through quiet competence and an ability to bring out the best in others. Jason had transformed from an arrogant troublemaker into a valuable team member who used his privileged background not to feel entitled but to contribute practical knowledge. The other human students had each shown their own strengths, but what they shared was an adaptability and resilience that seemed uniquely human. When we returned to the academy, Dean Valerius was thrilled with the results. "This is exactly the kind of positive publicity we need," she said, her forearms gesturing excitedly. "The board is already discussing expanding our human recruitment program." I felt a sense of pride in what our team had accomplished, but also a growing awareness of the implications. Humans brought extraordinary capabilities to academic environments, but they also brought challenges that our educational systems were still learning to address. As I watched Maya and the other students disembark, now confident and accomplished representatives of our institution, I wondered how we could continue to evolve our educational approaches to fully harness their potential while managing the complexities they introduced to our academic community. The galaxy was still learning what it meant to educate humans alongside other species, but one thing was becoming increasingly clear: the process was changing us as much as it was changing them. The following cycle brought new developments that would further test our understanding of human nature and its place in galactic society. The Academy received a delegation from the Galactic Educational Council, the body that accredited educational institutions across known space. They were conducting a comprehensive review of our programs, with particular focus on how we were integrating human students into our multi-species environment. The delegation was led by Director Kalin, a distinguished academic from a core world institution with a reputation for traditionalism and skepticism toward educational innovations. I was assigned to coordinate much of their visit, which would include classroom observations, interviews with faculty and students, and a review of our curriculum and policies. We received reports about some unusual approaches at your institution, Director Kalin said during our initial meeting. His species, the Ilarians, were known for their subtle but unmistakable air of superiority, which he displayed in abundance. Particularly regarding your human students and the self-defense program you've implemented. I explained the reasoning behind the program, emphasizing how it had reduced conflicts and improved safety for all students. Director Kalin listened politely but with obvious skepticism. Self-defense training is typically the domain of military or law enforcement institutions, not academic environments, he observed. Are you suggesting that your campus is so dangerous that students require combat training? Not at all, I replied. The program is actually about conflict resolution and personal safety. It's designed to reduce violence by ensuring all students have basic skills to protect themselves, which has proven to deter potential aggressors. The director raised a skeptical eyebrow. And you have human students teaching these courses. Students with no formal credentials in combat instruction or security protocols. They work under the supervision of certified faculty from various martial traditions, I explained. Their contribution is primarily in demonstrating practical applications of physics and anatomy to self-defense situations. Director Kalin made a note on his data pad, his expression, suggesting he found this explanation inadequate. I'll be observing several classes during my visit, including the self-defense program. I'll also want to interview some of the human students involved. Over the next week, the delegation visited numerous classes and interviewed faculty and students. I accompanied them for much of the time, answering questions and providing context for what they observed. Their presence created a certain tension on campus, particularly among the human students who felt they were being scrutinized more heavily than others. Maya Chen was one of the students selected for an interview with Director Kalin. I was present as an observer, per Academy protocol. The interview began with standard questions about Maya's academic experience and satisfaction with the institution. Your academic record is exceptional, the director noted, reviewing her file on his data pad. Perfect scores in advanced dimensional physics, quantum mechanics, applied mathematics. Quite impressive for a species that only achieved space travel relatively recently. Human scientific understanding has developed rapidly since joining the galactic community, Maya replied calmly. We've been eager to catch up. Indeed, the director said, making another note. And you're one of the instructors in the self-defense program. At what point did you decide to pursue combat training alongside your academic studies? I don't consider it combat training, Maya corrected gently. It's personal safety education. And it's not separate from my academic studies. Understanding physics and anatomy enhances the effectiveness of self-defense techniques. The director looked up from his data pad, his expression sharp with interest. You approach self-defense as an academic subject. Of course, Maya replied, as if this were obvious. It's applied physics, biomechanics, psychology, and sociology. Why wouldn't I approach it academically? Director Kalin leaned forward slightly. Most species consider combat to be a physical skill, not an intellectual pursuit. They learn through repetition and physical conditioning, not through academic study. Humans learn through multiple modalities, Maya explained. Physical training is important, but understanding the underlying principles allows for more effective application and adaptation to new situations. The director asked several more questions about Maya's approach to self-defense instruction, his skepticism gradually giving way to genuine curiosity. He seemed particularly interested in her explanation of how force vectors and structural vulnerabilities could be mathematically analyzed to determine optimal defensive techniques. After the interview, as we walked back to my office, Director Kalin was uncharacteristically quiet. Finally, he said, that young human approaches physical conflict the way I approach theoretical physics. As a problem to be solved through analysis and understanding. That is typical of how humans approach many subjects, I replied. They tend to look for underlying principles that can be applied across different contexts. The director nodded thoughtfully. It's an interesting approach. Unconventional, but interesting. The delegation's visit culminated in a comprehensive review meeting where they would present their preliminary findings. The entire academy leadership was in attendance, along with representatives from the student body, including Maya and Jason Carter. Director Kalin began his presentation by acknowledging the academy's academic excellence and diverse student body. Your institution maintains high educational standards and provides a rich learning environment for students from many different worlds, he noted. However, we do have some concerns about certain programs and policies that deviate from established educational norms. He paused, looking around the room. The self-defense program, in particular, raises questions about the appropriate boundaries between academic education and combat training. While we acknowledge the reported reduction in campus conflicts, we're concerned about the message it sends about the nature of academic environments. Dean Valerius responded diplomatically. The program was implemented in response to specific challenges that arose with the integration of human students. It has proven effective in creating a safer environment for all students. Perhaps, Director Kalin said, but we're concerned about the precedent it sets. If every institution began teaching combat skills to address conflicts between students, we'd be militarizing educational environments across the galaxy. Before the dean could respond, Maya raised her hand. The director nodded, surprised that a student would speak during such a formal proceeding. With respect, Director, Maya began, I think there's a fundamental misunderstanding about the nature of the program. It's not about teaching combat skills, it's about teaching personal safety and conflict resolution through the lens of applied science. She stood and walked to the front of the room, where a holographic display was available. May I demonstrate? Director Kalin looked to Dean Valerius, who nodded. Please proceed. Maya activated the holographic display, showing a basic physics simulation of force and motion. The program begins with fundamental principles of physics, she explained. Understanding how force is applied, how it's distributed, how objects respond to impact. This is basic mechanics, which is part of any standard physics curriculum. She manipulated the display to show how force applied to different parts of a structure produced different results. We then apply these principles to biological systems, how different tissues respond to impact, which parts of the body are more vulnerable, which are more resilient. This is essentially biomechanics, another standard scientific discipline. The display now showed anatomical models with highlighted vulnerability points. By understanding these principles, students can better protect themselves and others. They can also understand how to apply force most efficiently if necessary to defend themselves. But the emphasis is always on de-escalation and avoidance of conflict. Jason Carter stood and joined Maya at the display. The program also teaches conflict resolution skills, he added. How to recognize potentially dangerous situations, how to diffuse tensions before they escalate to physical confrontation. These are social skills that benefit all students, regardless of species. Director Kalin watched with interest as Maya and Jason demonstrated how the program integrated scientific principles with practical applications. This is certainly not what I expected, he admitted. You're approaching self-defense as an interdisciplinary science rather than as combat training. Exactly, Maya confirmed. It's about understanding and applying fundamental principles across different contexts. That's what education is supposed to teach, isn't it? The director nodded slowly. That's an interesting perspective. One we haven't encountered before. The review continued with other aspects of the Academy's programs, but the exchange about the self-defense program had clearly made an impression on the delegation. When they presented their final recommendations, there was a significant shift in their position regarding the program. While we maintain some concerns about the potential for misuse of combat skills in academic environments, Director Kalin concluded, we acknowledge the innovative approach taken by this institution. The self-defense program, as implemented here, appears to be an effective application of scientific principles to practical safety education. We recommend further study of this approach before making any determinations about its appropriateness for broader adoption. After the delegation departed, Dean Valerius called me to her office. "That was quite impressive," she said, her forearms gesturing in what I recognized as satisfaction. Maya and Jason presented the program in a way that addressed the Council's concerns while highlighting its educational value. "They understand the program better than anyone," I replied. "They've been instrumental in developing and teaching it." The dean nodded. "Their contribution extends beyond just the self-defense program. The way they represented the Academy today demonstrates the value of human students in our academic community." She paused, then added, "I've been considering expanding the program to include a research component, studying the application of scientific principles to conflict resolution across different species. Maya would be an ideal candidate to lead such research." "I think she would be interested," I said. "Her approach to the subject is inherently academic." The dean made a note on her data pad. "I'll discuss it with her. In the meantime, I want you to continue monitoring the integration of human students and identifying any other areas where their unique perspectives might benefit our educational approaches." As I left the dean's office, I reflected on how far our understanding of human students had come since the incident with Jason and Maya. What had begun as a response to a specific problem had evolved into an innovative educational approach that was attracting attention from across the galaxy. Humans brought challenges to our educational systems, but they also brought fresh perspectives and creative solutions that enriched the academic environment for everyone. The key was learning to understand and harness their unique abilities rather than trying to fit them into existing molds. That evening, I observed Maya and several other students in the Academy's common area. They were studying together, their data pads displaying complex mathematical equations interspersed with anatomical diagrams. They were laughing and discussing concepts with an enthusiasm that was contagious. Jason was among them, now fully accepted as a valued member of the academic community rather than a privileged troublemaker. I thought about what Director Kalin had said, how humans approached problems with a unique blend of analysis and practicality. As I watched them work together, combining different disciplines to solve complex problems, I felt optimistic about the future of education in our multi-species society. Humans might challenge our conventions and complicate our systems, but they also expanded our understanding of what education could be and what students could achieve. The galaxy was still learning how to educate humans, but humans were teaching us just as much about how education could evolve to meet the challenges of a diverse and complex universe. Chapter 5 3 cycles after the delegation from the Galactic Educational Council visited our academy, a new opportunity emerged that would further test and showcase the unique capabilities of our human students. The academy was selected to participate in a cultural exchange program with the prestigious University of Xylos, located in the galactic core and known for its traditional approach to education and its primarily non-human student body. The exchange would involve 6 students from each institution spending a full cycle studying at the other institution. The program was designed to promote understanding between different educational approaches and to expose students to diverse perspectives. Dean Valerius saw this as an opportunity to demonstrate how well our human students could adapt to different academic environments, and perhaps more importantly, to show how our approach to education had evolved to incorporate human perspectives. When the selection committee met to choose our representatives, there was little debate about including Maya Chen among them. Her academic excellence and diplomatic skills made her an obvious choice. What was more surprising was the committee's decision to include Jason Carter as well. Jason has shown remarkable growth and adaptability, Dean Valerius explained when I questioned this choice. His experience transitioning from a problematic student to a valued member of our community would be valuable to share. Plus, his family's connections in the galactic core could prove useful if our students encounter any difficulties. The other 4 representatives were chosen to represent the diversity of our student body: a Draxian named Zorp, a Vexian called Vexa, a Crystallid designated Crystal 9, and another human student named Lisa Wang, who had distinguished herself in xenolinguistics and diplomatic studies. The 6 students from the University of Xylos arrived at our academy 2 weeks before our students were scheduled to depart. They were an impressive group, representing the academic elite of their respective species. Their leader was a Thescian named Professor Tvek, who would be accompanying them as an exchange coordinator. The Xylos students were initially polite but somewhat condescending toward our human students, making subtle comments about the relaxed academic standards at institutions that admitted humans. Our students handled these remarks with grace, neither responding defensively nor appearing intimidated. Maya, in particular, seemed unperturbed by the implied criticisms, focusing instead on learning about the Xylos' educational approach and sharing insights about our own methods. The two groups of students attended classes together, participated in joint research projects, and engaged in numerous discussions about educational philosophy and methodology. It became increasingly clear that the Xylos' approach emphasized deep specialization within established disciplines, while our academy encouraged interdisciplinary thinking and practical application of theoretical knowledge. The differences were particularly evident in a joint problem-solving session where students from both institutions were asked to address a simulated planetary crisis. The Xylos students immediately divided the problem according to their specializations, with each student focusing on their area of expertise. Our students, led by Maya, took a more holistic approach, looking for connections between different aspects of the problem and seeking solutions that addressed multiple issues simultaneously. At first, the Xylos students dismissed this approach as unfocused and inefficient. But as the exercise progressed, they began to see the value in our students' methods. The holistic approach revealed connections and solutions that the specialized approach had missed. By the end of the exercise, the Xylos students were genuinely impressed by our students' ability to think across disciplinary boundaries and to integrate diverse perspectives into a coherent solution. Professor T. Vec acknowledged this difference in approach. During a debriefing session, "Your students demonstrate a remarkable ability to integrate knowledge across disciplines," he noted. "Our students tend to develop deeper expertise within their specialties but may miss connections that span multiple fields." Maya responded diplomatically. "Both approaches have value. Specialization allows for deeper understanding of specific subjects, while interdisciplinary thinking can reveal unexpected connections and solutions. The ideal education probably combines both approaches." The exchange continued with similar moments of mutual learning and growing respect. The Xylos students came to appreciate the practical orientation of our education, while our students benefited from exposure to the deeper theoretical knowledge of their counterparts. When it was time for our students to depart for Xylos, there was a genuine sense of friendship and mutual respect between the two groups. The journey to the University of Xylos took 2 weeks aboard a luxury transport vessel provided by the Xylos institution. The students used this time to prepare for their studies and to discuss strategies for representing our academy effectively. Maya, as usual, approached this with academic rigor, researching the Xylos curriculum and faculty to identify areas where our students' perspectives might be most valuable. Jason surprised me by taking a leadership role in these preparations, drawing on his experience with the self-defense program to emphasize the importance of understanding different perspectives and finding common ground. "Remember, we're not there to prove we're better than them," he told the others. "We're there to share what we've learned and to learn from them. Keep an open mind and don't get defensive if they question our methods." This was a far cry from the arrogant student who had challenged Maya in class all those cycles ago. His transformation was a testament to both his personal growth and the effectiveness of our educational approach. The University of Xylos was located on a massive space station that had been expanded and renovated over centuries to become one of the most prestigious educational institutions in the galaxy.